everybody. Good afternoon for me. Good morning for most of you, I guess. My name is Mark Engelen, and I was asked to present on the new ALD guideline that will come out soon. It's been a long road, so I'm glad that it's finally near completion. Many people contributed. Too many people to fit on the title page. So all the contributors are listed on the last slide. And to just get on with it, I think what many people might wonder is why even make a new guideline? What are the advantages? Well, there are several, because guidelines are becoming more and more common now, especially in rare diseases. And the advantage is that it creates clarity for everybody, for patients affected by these disorders, so they can know what kind of care is standard and appropriate. Also for the healthcare providers, because it's an easy checklist to see that you are delivering appropriate care. And well, that is more important in some countries than in others, but in some countries it's very important to justify diagnostic procedures to health insurance companies. And then it's extremely helpful if you have a document that outlines what would be optimal care. So there's clearly incentives to develop a guideline or a set of recommendations to provide universal standardized care. The difficult thing is that in any disease that you manage, there's of course many practical questions. And what are the criteria to establish a diagnosis? What are common complications? How often should you follow up, and with what tests? What are effective treatments and which don't work? And especially in rare diseases, there's often little practical information available. And our aim was to reach consensus, to create a document that would be usable and workable in different countries, and that would outline the best approach, the standard of care for ALD in all its in everything concerning the diagnosis, management, and treatment. So what we did is first, of course, try to interest the people around the globe to participate. And fortunately, many healthcare providers and other stakeholders were interested in contributing to this project. And we ended up with over 12 institutions all over the planet, unfortunately in only 2 continents, but still a good working group to start with. And I hope in the future that we can also add circles to the other continents, but this is a good start. So first, we generated with a small group, we generated the most important questions. And for these questions, we also asked input of several patient organizations in Europe and in the US. To also make sure that patients' voices were heard in those clinical questions. And after we had defined the questions, we did a very extensive literature search, which is summarized in this flow chart. And we ended up with a large number of publications on the diagnosis and treatment of ALD. And with these with this literature review, we tried to answer most of those questions, but as expected, there was not enough evidence for most of these practical problems, either because no studies had been done or because the studies were very small or retrospective and therefore not really conclusive. And what we generally do in medicine, if there is not enough evidence, we try to go to the next best thing, and that is the expert opinion of people who have lots of experience in the field. But of course, the problem with expert opinion is that most experts will not agree on everything, and we need a way to reach a consensus, a workable consensus. And there is in medicine there is a procedure called a Delphi procedure, and that is a standardized, structured way to integrate this expert opinion into a consensus statement that is a reasonable weighing of all the different opinions. And that is summarized in this cartoon, and I will go into that in a little more detail later. So first, how do you define consensus? Because you will never get 100% agreement on everything. And for the Delphi procedure, consensus is usually defined as follows. The statements can be, you can, as an expert, you can disagree or agree with a statement. And consensus is defined as if 80% of people either completely disagree with the statement or agree. And that is defined as 80% of the participants score it between 1 and 3 or between 7 and 9. And if that criterion is met at any stage in the Delphi procedure, the agreement of the statement is said to have reached consensus. But it's important to realize that even if it reaches consensus, it does not mean that everybody fully agrees with it. So it sounds easy, and basically it is, but still it takes a lot of time because we were done with the literature review back in 2019 in the different pre-COVID world. And that is the time that we invited the prospective panelists to join this project. And after that, we developed all the materials, so all the lists of different questions that need to be rated. And we did the first online questionnaire, so all the panelists could fill out could rate every statement on the 1 to 9 score that I just showed. So we created different groups. So we created the group of pediatricians and neurologists, a group of endocrinologists, metabolic experts, transplanters, radiologists, and laboratory scientists. And each of the groups graded the statements that were within their areas of expertise. And after the first round, of course, you get some statements that are agreed upon and some statements that that still require more discussion. So after the online the questionnaire for round 1, the results were compiled, and the statements that had not reached consensus were presented to the same groups again, but this time accompanied by anonymized statements from other experts for review. And then people were allowed to change their mind based on the remarks and comments and scores by the other experts. And after this round 2, there was, of course, still disagreement on some more complicated statements. And a consensus meeting was organized. Originally, we had planned a real live meeting for more lively discussions, but 2020 was already very much the COVID world, so we had to settle for a virtual online meeting. And during that meeting, we had structured discussions on all the disagreed statements, and were able to reach consensus on almost every statement. And this was back in December of 2021. And now, almost a year later, we have a completed draft of the final guidelines that we hope to publish soon. So in the end, 28 different experts from 12 academic institutions in 6 different countries contributed to this panel. And yeah, it's worthwhile to state that, of course, this is therefore it consists of only people from Europe and the United States, and it would be better that if in future versions we could also find centers from the other continents to contribute. So I'm not going to summarize the entire multi-page the consensus statement that will be published and will be accessible to everybody who's interested, but to give you some examples that I think have real practical use. every center over the world has its own way of making MRI scans. So for ALD, some centers would give gadolinium, others wouldn't. And we know now that giving gadolinium contrast for MRI scans is something that does have, if you do it often, it does have some, there are some health concerns. So it would be better to try to limit it. But a male ALD patient could get dozens of scans over his lifetime. So I think it's very valuable that we now came to a consensus that we will not advise to give gadolinium standard to every MRI scan for every patient. And I think for clinicians, it is a real support that you can now find this recommendation in documents, and I think that will really change practice. Also, something that we also encountered in many centers is that there's no standard to how long you should wait before acquiring the images after administering gadolinium. Some centers would do a minute or less, some 5 minutes, some 10 minutes, and it does have consequences, because we know that, for instance, for ALD, the enhancement can be very subtle, and if you scan after 1 or 2 minutes after administering the content, the contrast, you can miss enhancement. So now I think after lively discussions, we agreed that it should be at least 5 minutes. And I think this is also a big step for patient safety, and it's great for the standardization of follow-up. So these things all seem very simple and straightforward, but actually they were not, because they were even within the same country in different cities, they were done in a different way. And I think it's a great step forward for patient care, and also potentially for research, for standardized follow-up, that we will hopefully all start doing it in the same way. Also, something um, that will now be published is the advice to screen also adult men for the occurrence of leukodystrophy. That is also something that is done in many countries, but in other countries there is no follow-up of adult men. While we now know that adult men can also develop leukodystrophy, and especially thanks to the French and German groups, we know that the bone marrow transplant is also a feasible treatment option for well-selected adult men. So I think it's also valuable to emphasize that in follow-up, that follow-up should not stop at 18. And to help to further help patients and clinicians, there's also strong recommendations for the frequency of follow-up. So these are all simple things that can have, well, a large impact in clinical practice. Now, a new option, of course, to give you an example, is to give recommendations on new treatment options, like the elivaldogene autotemcel, the lentiviral gene therapy product from Bluebird Bio. And we also tried to give recommendations for which settings this new treatment would be appropriate. Unfortunately, after the guideline was roughly finished, Bluebird Bio withdrew from Europe. So in practice, this recommendation will only be feasible in the United States for now, because that is the only the country in the world where Bluebird Bio aims to market this product for now. So of course, as is to be expected, because there are such differences between countries in the organization of healthcare and the availability of some services, these recommendations should always be, well, adapted to the local situation. Well, and then this is a summary that you can find in the guideline once it's published, and this summarizes the appropriate screening protocol for the different complaints in boys or men or women with ALD. And I think there's also a spin-off, because not only do we now have a set of recommendations that will hopefully be of value to to the healthcare providers and patients in different countries. But I think projects like this will also further strengthen the already excellent international collaboration. I think it's an important step towards harmonizing care and follow-up between different countries, which can only benefit us all. And maybe the fact that we now have something of a structured follow-up plan will facilitate the implementations of new treatments once they become available. And it will also offer opportunities for future collaborations, either observational studies or new clinical trials. So I hope this collaboration will not stop, but that it will expand over the time. Well, this project was made possible by financial support by Bluebird Bio, Swan Bio, and Minorix. They provided us with a grant so we could use the services of Adelphi Values, which is a healthcare consulting firm that is very proficient in guideline development and in the implementation of and in the Delphi procedure, and that was invaluable because it is so much work to organize and process this. So that was very helpful. Without this practical support, it would have taken much longer. And as promised, here is the summary of all the people who served in one of the expert panels. I'm not going to read them all. And as you can see, they represent a large amount of different academic hospitals and research institutes. I hope that you will all be able to access the international recommendations, and that it will help you in understanding and organizing your care. And I want to thank you for your attention. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Mark, I think there's a couple of questions in the Q&A if you want to.
I will try, but I don't see them.
If you go into the Q&A in the open section, you should see them. I can.
Sorry, I was in the wrong panel. Thank you.
No problem. No problem.
Okay. Keith says, can you highlight any differences from the 2012 guidelines? Right. Well, mostly that in 2012 we basically just did a review paper, and that had some very general recommendations. And I think now that we've become much more specific, so we don't only say do an MRI, but we say do it like this: do these sequences, don't give gadolinium only if this and this is the case. We have very specific detailed suggestions, and I think they also carry more weight, because this is the opinion of many people who have extensive experience in caring for people with ALD, and also because there was much input from the patient organizations. I think that these are more detailed and carry more weight. But that's the main difference. It's more practical. It's not just a general description. It's more practical. Oh, the next question is there a link to the paper? Yeah, there will be, but it's not published yet. We've only just submitted it for publication, and I hope it will soon be accepted somewhere, and then I hope it will quickly be available to all those who are interested in reading it. The next question is, was neuropsychological evaluation considered at all during the consensus? Yes, it was. There are some recommendations on neuropsychological testing also in it. Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's it.
There's actually a few
Oh,
more
yeah.
in the chat
Yeah.
in the Q&A.
Okay, there's one question that just says PDF. I think that refers to yeah, but it's that's not available yet. Will be soon, I hope. And can I the map of the participating nations? Yes, I can do that. So that's basically Germany, France, Italy, the Netherlands, and the United States. And France. 6. It should be 6. Let me. Italy, the Netherlands, Germany, France, United States. Yeah. So only European and United States. Yeah. And the point is, we've discussed when we were planning this that we would like to have participants from all over the world. But yeah, we couldn't really find expert centers in the other continents. But I hope that in the future we will find other groups that are interested in joining for a revision in a few years. Because of course now, yeah, it's kind of geared towards the healthcare system as it exists in Europe and the US. Oh, I forgot the United Kingdom. Sorry. Yeah, excuse me. And there's another question about the follow-up chart. Yeah, I can pull that one up too. And of course, that's a very succinct, of a very the short summary of the full recommendations. But basically, it details the important tests we think have health benefits for both pediatric and adult male and female patients with ALD. So to summarize, that is of course MRI screening in male patients, and the frequency depends on the age. And that is of course the screening of the screening and treatment for spinal cord disease in adult patients, both men and women, and the endocrine dysfunction screening in male patients. And once again, I hope you will all be able to download it in the near future, and then you can look at it in detail. Okay, thanks. Well, thank you for your attention. I think this was about all the time we had, I think. And I'll make sure, I think that ALD Connect will definitely publish a link to the recommendations once they are accepted, hopefully within, hopefully this year, if we're lucky.